Hi everyone. So you've gone out, gotten yourself an IDE, some language runtime, and you're feeling ready to make a website. In this video, I want to take a minute to talk about static content. That's content on your website that doesn't have a program attached to it. There's no JavaScript looping through some data that was fetched, doing anything after the page loads. Instead, static content is material that just sits there waiting to be read by users. So we're going to go through creating a static web page and then seeing how we can use a development web server to load that material and make it visible for ourselves when we want to preview what this website will look like. So in order to make static content, I first need a place to put it. I've already created a folder for myself and opened that folder in my IDE. Now I just need a file. I'm going to make a file for my static content called index.html because static content is typically written in the language HTML. This HTML file is just text. I can throw whatever text I want in there, maybe my little bulleted list here, maybe some paragraphs about HTML. HTML, what it actually is the hypertext markup language. This language specializes in taking normal text, like this that I'm typing here, and marking it up with annotations that describe different features about the organization and the meaning of that text. So I've got my little HTML document here that I've written. This is almost valid HTML already. In fact, if I try to load this in the browser, it's going to do its best to treat this like HTML. And so to prove that, I want to take a minute and preview this page that we've created. In order to see this file that I've created, I'm going to use a development web server. This is a web server that we wouldn't really want to use for a production website that we're showing to the world, but it's just enough to let us preview it on our own page. Specifically, I'll be using the JavaScript HTTP server module that you can run with Node.js, or what I'm going to use is actually a language runtime for JavaScript called Bun. So Bun works just like Node.js. If you're familiar with the Node and NPM commands, you can substitute them in the way that I'm using Bun in this video. But what Bun is it's a way for us to run JavaScript right on our computer, separate from a website. If you need to install it, you can just visit bun.sh here. On Mac or Linux, or in the Windows subsystem for Linux, if you have ever used WSL, you just type this command and you've got Bun. If you want it in native Windows, you can also use Chocolatey or the Scoop package manager to go and install Bun. It's also just one line, really quick and simple. But once I've got that runtime all set up, to actually get this HTTP server module, all I need to do is, with a terminal in my project folder, I can bun install HTTP server. When I do that, it goes out and fetches this server module. You can see I've got a ton of extra files here that'll actually be the subject of a future video. But if I want to preview my website, all I need to do is bun HTTP server. And when I do that, you see I get a ton of text that says this thing is now up and running, and it tells me I can visit my website on the address 127.0.0.1. If you're familiar at all with networking, you might recognize this as the loopback or localhost interface. This is just your computer's address to say that it wants to talk to itself. And for us, it has opened up this port on 8080 for us viewing our website. If I go and I click on this and I visit it in my browser, you can see I've got a web page now that sort of has the content that we put. You might notice though, there's something terribly wrong right now, which is that this text that we've written doesn't have any formatting at all. Our bulleted list has become part of a paragraph. Our header isn't really recognizable. HTML by default is not a white space preserving language. It'll keep little spaces between words, but if we want our website to start looking like HTML, we need to make use of that markup tag that we talked about before. So in HTML, our vehicle for annotation is a tag. We write tags by enclosing the tag's name in angle brackets. So a great example of this, the first one I always like to show people, is if I put angle brackets and I put HTML inside, I am saying everything that follows this is an HTML document. Pretty much every HTML document you write to be valid HTML has to start with that tag there. Most tags also have a matching closing tag to identify where a region or where that tag's region ends. So something like HTML says this is the start of an HTML document. We also need /HTML here to say, hey, this is the end of our HTML document. And anything between this beginning and this end, that is part of our document. Inside of here, we've got a couple other tags that we conventionally see. First, there is a head tag. And what the head tag is for is a place for us to put things that aren't necessarily things we want to see visibly on the page, but are extra metadata about the page. One great example of this is something like a document title. So I've got some title that I want to put on my web page. It's not something that will appear inside that white box of text, but it is still information that maybe is useful for a search engine, maybe is useful for the browser to know what's attached to your content and how it should actually display it or index it so that someone could find it in search results. So there's that head section, and you can see we use that same starting and ending convention to say everything in here is part of the head. Likewise, we've got a body section, which is everything that should be part of the document. So I can say all of this text I've written is part of the body of my HTML. I can even use tags that tell me something about the text that's here. I can say, oh, well, this header objectives, I want this to be an H1, a level 1 header. So if I do this and then I save the file and refresh my browser, what we end up seeing is that now that header that we specified is larger, it's on its own line, it's bolded, and even some of that metadata that we specified, like the page title, gets used to change the presentation of our website. The browser knows to change the tab to the title. It knows to make this header emphasized on its own line. And there are many tags that work exactly like this. If I've got a paragraph of text, I can start it with the p tag, end that tag with /p. And now HTML will actually recognize this thing is a paragraph. It should have paragraph styling. If I refresh, those will appear on their own lines. In the same way, if I have a list of items, I can use UL, which is short for unordered list. There's also a ordered list if you like one that has a 1 and a 2 and a 3. But inside my unordered list, each list item can have its own LI region that says this is one thing that is part of this larger list. And if I go through and I add this to all of my list items, start and end each one, then when I save and I refresh my browser again, now those list items each appear in their own bulleted list. And you can see as we add structure with markup to our HTML, we start to get a document that looks a little bit more like what I had envisioned in my head. HTML is this markup, and it is very important to learn all of the different tags and how they provide meaning. But the nice thing is, all of them work pretty much exactly the same. I don't have to go and exhaustively cover every single one with you, because as long as you know a tag starts and a tag ends, everything else is just learning what tags are out there that we can use. There is one tiny last feature I do want to cover about HTML, and that is that some tags, like image tags or links, do require additional attributes that provide just a bit of extra information about what the tag does. So if you think about it, something like a link is an A tag, and I can put an A tag right around some text in my document, but that by itself is not enough to really describe what this link should do. Links need a target. They need to go somewhere to be useful. And so we need to provide extra information. The way that we do that is with an HTML attribute, and that goes right in the opening tag after the name. We put a space, then we put the name of an attribute, an equal sign, and then in quotes, whatever value we're putting for that attribute. For links, we always provide an href that says this is the hyperlink reference of this link. This is where this link should go when someone clicks on it. For this link, maybe I decide when someone clicks this link, they should get to visit the developer portal on Mozilla's Developer Network website. This is a wonderful resource for anything related to HTML and anything related to JavaScript, CSS. It has resources and tutorials for all of it. But now that I've provided this little extra piece of information, if I save and I refresh one more time, now I've got this link, and you can see when I hover it, it tells me where it's going to go. If I click on it, I end up here on the MDN portal. Like I said, some attributes are necessary. Something like an image doesn't make sense unless we know what file is supposed to be appearing in the image. Other attributes are completely optional and just provide a little change in behavior, just provide some extra details. If you are interested in what is out there in HTML, the MDN website does actually have a great HTML elements reference. If I go and I click on this, I can get every single tag that exists that's out there to use. They're even broken up into nice categories. We've got stuff about content sectioning, things like, oh, well, here's a tag for your main section, a tag for your footer. We've got stuff related to text, breaking up text into tables, into captions, into list items, even things that apply just a little bit of extra semantics to our text. And the nice thing about this MDN reference is I can click on any of these. Like, let's say I am scrolling down and I see this input here. If I click on the input tag, I get a page that explains this thing, says how it's used, what it's for, and I've even got a live example here. It's saying, oh, well, here's an input. And this input has a bunch of attributes on it, like type equals text, and I can see a live preview over here on the other side. If I change this thing and I say, well, you know what happens? This says text. What if this said checkbox? Can I do that? And you can see it actually updates in real time. Suddenly it becomes a checkbox. I can check and uncheck it. And this page lists all of the attributes, all of the values that are valid for those attributes. It's a wonderful reference for everything in HTML. But besides that, learning HTML is just learning how to use these tags to structure your content and make a document that describes what you want your users to see. In the next video, we'll talk about how we can make that HTML look just a little bit prettier, but hopefully this gives you a good starting point to see how you can design content on a website that doesn't change in response to a user. I will catch you all in the next video.